Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Masu Haq Khan. I'm a Windsor parent, and when I heard that the theme of this year's TEDx talk was the road less traveled, I wanted to share a personal philosophy or framework that I've developed based on my years of lived experience. I felt that this group of high-achieving young women, and perhaps high achievers everywhere, could benefit from. But before I share the framework, I need to give you all a little personal background for context. So, once upon a time, in the land far, far away, Ohio, I too attended a small, private, academically rigorous, all-girls school. My school was called the Columbus School for Girls, and I attended it from pre-K till 12th grade. I loved CSG, but there were a couple things about it that were a little unusual, but maybe familiar to you all. The first was that you had to work inordinately hard to be a good student at CSG. I remember in 9th grade spending a minimum of 4 hours a night on homework and studying, and this was a vast difference from my peers at other schools. The second unusual thing was that from a very young age, probably as early as 2nd grade, parents, adults, teachers in our orbit were very curious about what it was we wanted to be or do when we grew up. Maybe because they were so invested in us and our educations. But for me, I found it kind of funny because from a young age, all I wanted to be was famous. Now, with that deep as a plate life aspiration in mind, you can only imagine how intense my craving for recognition from a young age was. And it really didn't help matters that my role model parents were academic superstars from India who had graduated at the top of their classes for everything, for high school, college, graduate school, and were now professional rock stars. My dad was a physicist, my mom was a pediatrician, and such was the emphasis that they placed on recognized achievement that once when we were returning from a middle school end of the year ceremony, where I had not won an award, they casually turned to me and said, "You know, Masu, your school asks us to come in for a lot of things, and it takes a lot of time away from work. So in the future, just let us know if you're gonna win an award so we know whether or not to attend." True story. And they're amazing parents, by the way. But as you can guess, with that background, I worked very hard from a young age to gain the recognition that being the best at something does. I would evaluate and discard activities based on whether or not, with enough elbow grease, I could be the best. And no matter what the activity was, no matter how much I enjoyed it, no matter how much I stood to grow or learn while practicing it, if I didn't think I stood a chance at being the best, it was out of my repertoire. Now, this strategy, well calculated and sad, had its rewards. I graduated the Columbus School for Girls, summa cum laude, class valedictorian, president of student council. I went on to study at Yale, where in my 3rd year, I was competitively selected to be the paid executive director of a 50-year-old New Haven nonprofit. From there, I was tapped to be in an elite secret senior society, and I graduated with honors in psychology. After Yale, I moved to Georgetown Law, where I made a law review, and I was tapped by a really prestigious law firm to work there. Within 2 months of my time at that law firm, another law firm, a national labor and employment law firm, asked me to be one of only 2 founding associates for their small Columbus, Ohio office. So at a time when most of my first-year associate peers were just getting their bearings, doing research and writing, I found that my name was on pleadings and I got to make appearances in federal court. One of my strongest memories from my early years of practice was in my first year performance review. The managing partner of my firm, who I respected tremendously, sat down with me and said that I was one of the most promising and finest young attorneys that he had worked with in his over 30 years of trial practice. So I give you this background, folks, because in the category of external validation and recognition, for a good couple decades, I was killing it. But then as in all interesting stories, came a plot twist. My husband also happened to be a high achiever. And when we were approaching our mid-30s, at a time when we were both on our professional trajectories towards greatness, and many of my peers were, my husband was offered the career opportunity of a lifetime. Would he please run the division, several divisions actually, of an international company based in London? When we sat down and evaluated what him excelling in that role would entail, and the financial benefit that this could bring our young and growing family, perhaps generationally, it really felt like the only responsible choice for me was to step off my own professional ladder. So I accompanied my husband with a 2-year-old in tow and another one who is now a Windsor student on the way. And my visa said, and I quote, "trailing spouse." I showed up in London as an expat, and for the first time, I wasn't chained to a desk. I had total and complete freedom to explore Europe if I wanted with my 2-year-old. Instead of feeling excited about the possibility and the whole world that had opened up to me of freedom, I was devastated. You see, to be without a job title, to be without an external metric of success at that point in my life meant that I had no idea who I was anymore. Now, I don't think that I'm the only high achiever, or I'm even in the minority of high achievers, who once they find themselves without work feels an identity crisis of sorts. But it's not talked about very much. A recent LinkedIn poll showed that 69% of American women at some point will step away from paid employment. Now, while most of them will go back into the workforce, we have spent so much time strategizing, calculating, and preparing for what we will do for work that almost by default, it becomes the main source of our self-worth. I think we have arrived at a place in our culture where we recognize that happiness comes from within. But I'm not sure that we're willing to accept that so too does self-worth. And that, my friends, is where my framework comes in, which I have cornily enough dubbed the Impress Yourself framework. When you practice this framework, you develop your own quiet confidence and the sense of self-worth. That means you don't need the external fix of outside voices or others to validate you. The Impress Yourself framework is simple, and it has just 4 ingredients. The first is to know yourself. The second is to grow yourself. The third is to impress yourself. And the fourth is to check yourself. In the know yourself category, that simply asks, what do you value most? You might ask yourself, how do I figure out what my most cherished values are? Well, renowned psychiatrist and happiness researcher, Dr. Judith Joseph says, in order to figure out your most cherished values, reflect upon times in your life that you have felt, quote unquote, full and fed. So plug into activities that you not only enjoyed, but that you derived a great sense of satisfaction out of. This could be planning a grand family reunion. It could be time spent in service activities with your religious community. It could be creating art. But whatever it is that gives you a sense of satisfaction, feeling good while accomplishing something, identify that and do more of it in your life. The second ingredient to impressing yourself is to grow yourself. Now, most of you Windsor students or your parents have done a great job of identifying what your strengths are and really working at honing them. But I'm not sure that we have prioritized taking the time to figure out what we could learn or enjoy from trying new things. So I really urge you to think about trying things that are out of your day-to-day repertoire. Things like ice skating or stand-up comedy or being, a pastry chef. While you might not be the best at these things, they will open up such richness and avenues to your life, new friends, new experiences, and you never know where those things could take you. The second avenue of growth that I've encountered in my life is identifying areas that are weaknesses for me, or stretches as we like to call them these days, and really trying to grow them. Not to be the best at that thing, but just because I think they're important. So for instance, if you find public speaking intimidating, hey, sign up for a TED Talk. There are many things that you can do in life to improve yourself. And when you do those things, you not only feel stronger, you become a person who is holistically more interesting, and you develop a sense of self-efficacy. The third ingredient in the Impress Yourself framework is to inspire yourself. The Collins Dictionary defines inspiring as exerting or stimulating a beneficial effect upon a person. I think we're all familiar with that old adage that it is better to give than it is to receive, but I don't know if people know the specifics of research behind it. Recently, a social psychologist, Liz Dunn, and her colleagues posted in the Journal of Science that those who spend more relatively on others compared to themselves experience far greater levels of satisfaction in their lives. So what does that mean for you? If you see someone or something in need and you can do something about it, just do it. This could be as small or as minor, I would say, as incorporating someone who has been left out of a conversation at a party in the conversation, or it could be larger. There are so many deeply entrenched problems that we face nationally and globally these days. Everything from climate change to political polarization, socioeconomic inequity, the problems that impact people are endless. You may be thinking, what can I, an average citizen, do to help any of these things? Well, you choose an issue that really troubles you, and you start by picking one thing that you can do to push the needle in a positive direction in your local sphere of influence. That could look like writing a newspaper article for your school on a little-known issue. It could be hosting a fundraiser. It could be volunteering for a food pantry. In my own life, once I stepped out of the official employment category, I have done things like work on issues related to protecting immigrant women and children fleeing violence. I have helped with the issue of making mental health care more accessible and more affordable for greater numbers of people. And I've really worked quite a bit on making interfaith connections and preventing religious discrimination and promoting awareness about it. These are just a few things, but when you take the time and effort to make a greater impact in the world, however small it may feel, you are developing a sense of very needed agency. So, the final, fourth ingredient in the Impress Yourself framework is to check yourself. What do I mean by checking yourself? Well, let me guess. Anytime something wonderful, amazing, or beautiful happens to you, or you achieve something amazing, what is the first thing you do? My guess is that you post about it on social media. Now, I'm not naive, and I don't think I'm going to stop anyone from doing all their posts. But what I do want to do is ask you that the next time you're about to post about yourself, you pause and you ask yourself 3 questions. 1, will posting about this achievement hurt someone else's feelings or make them feel left out? 2, do I really need the temporary high, like to my core, of the validation of getting the likes and comments from this post? Or 3, if I just target particular people in my life who've supported me and would be genuinely happy for me about this and let them know, might I feel the same or almost similar? I ask you to restrain yourself because the more you do this, the more you're building a muscle in yourself that says, I validate myself. I don't need other people to validate me. And that's a really important thing. So Now that I've gone through the framework, I hope that many of you have picked up on the fact that this is also a recipe for building character. And now more than ever, character matters. We need good, smart women and people of character out in the world, being upstanders, being activists, being connectors, being caregivers, solving problems, not just for this generation, but for generations to come. And I can honestly say, for myself, at the ripe age of 52, because I've learned and practiced this Impress Yourself framework, I no longer compare myself with my peers who are congresspeople, Pulitzer Prize winners, captains of industry, academia, and medicine, and find myself lacking. I am very proud of their achievements, and because of my own professional experience, I know that none of those achievements was earned without great sacrifice in other areas of their lives. I so appreciate the richness and the rigor of the educational experiences we all shared together, and I know we share those learnings with people in different ways. Nothing about a great education is ever wasted. So, in my heart of hearts, now I can honestly say, without the job title, even if the things that I do to contribute to the world forever go unrecognized, even if they remain my own anonymous achievements, I know about them, and that's all I need. So my call to action for you all is don't do it for the gram. Do it for yourselves. Seriously though, it's please, please, please do not let external metrics like what college you go to or what job title you eventually hold define who you are. Start using this Impress Yourself framework. And I promise you, even though we have no idea where the future will take you, when you practice this framework, you know that whether you go down a road filled with recognition or a road with anonymous achievements, or most likely a road filled with some of both, you too will know that you are enough. Thank you so much.